Good morning, men. It's going to be a great day. You bet. There are lots of seemingly hopeless situations in which people find themselves from time to time. All of us, from time to time, have found ourselves in a seemingly hopeless situation. Some of us this morning are in a seemingly hopeless situation. And so today we're going to look at what Jesus has to say to people, to men who are in such situations. And it could be almost anything. It could be a shattered relationship. I was thinking this week about different things that are going on with some of the men that I know about. In our Bible study, there are lots of things going on I don't know about, but I know that, for example, there are child custody battles going on that it just seems like there is no end to them. I know that there are financial disasters, and it seems there's no possible way to escape a complete meltdown. There are health issues. Some, like blindness, coming on someone. We have cancers. We have all of these kinds of situations that relate to health. Employment issues. You've got 430 emails that you've not been able to reply to yet. And your boss is leaning on you and can't seem to understand what your problem is. Or you've been out of work for months and months and months and months and months, and it just seems hopeless. You don't know if God's ever going to show up to answer your prayer. You don't even know if He's listening. Or at least it doesn't seem like He's listening. Maybe you believe He's listening, but it doesn't seem like it. And the situation just seems hopeless. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. Here's the name of the message is Hope for Hopeless Situations. And you know what? I want to ask you a question. There's that old adage in speaking, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And so each week, I go ahead and give you the name of the message, and then I put these 3 circles up there. But this morning I was thinking about doing it more inductively, not putting the circles up until I was ready to talk about them. So would you rather have me put all 3 circles up now, or can you live with me just doing the one? Which is the better way? Well, when I say live with it, I mean which do you think is a better way? All 3 circles at the beginning, so you know where the whole thing is going, or unfold it as we go. All right. Well, that's a big help. And then, the other question. How many of you don't really care one way or the other? Okay. Okay. Well, I think for this morning, we'll try it this inductive way. We'll just put them up as we go. And if somebody has apoplexy about it, see me. We'll go back to the other way. My purpose this morning is this. By the time we're done, I want you to believe that there's no such thing as a hopeless situation. Actually, let me restate that. My purpose this morning is I want by the end of this message for you to believe Jesus that there's no such thing as a hopeless situation. And I want you to believe that it is important for you to help other people believe that too. That's where we're going. And, the first piece of this, we're going to call the story of a man who has lost hope. This is John chapter 5. Let's look at it together. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. For those of you who were not here for the previous message, we looked at these three incompatible little illustrations of fasting at a wedding, of putting new cloth on old cloth to patch it, and then putting new wine into old wineskins. And so this first word in my translation says afterward. So after he's just done that, okay, after he's demonstrated that we're part of this, we're the new wineskins, we're part of this unstoppable invasion force that is guaranteed ultimate victory through total global conquest, and so we should act like it. The next thing he says is afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem. So this is one of the ways we can act like it, you see. Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda, with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. And then the next verse and a half are in some of the 5,000 or so Greek manuscripts, but not in some of the others. And so some, I think all different versions will make note of that. 99.9% of the Bible is indisputably correct. We don't have the original autographa, that's autograph with an A on the end. The original manuscripts that, in this case, John wrote, none of those are extant. However, there are only like a half a dozen copies of Aristotle's works, but we have 5,000 Greek New Manuscripts. And almost all of them are in complete agreement on 99.9% of what they say. But for this next verse and a half, this is, I guess, a sidebar. For the next verse and a half, these words appear in some manuscripts, but not in others. Now, my personal guess is that they were in the original manuscripts and got omitted, but you could just as easily make a case that they were not in the original manuscripts and somebody added them later. But I think the text makes more sense with the verses. So I'm going to read those verses, verses 3b and 4. Okay, so these people are laying on the porches, waiting for a certain movement of the water. For an angel of the Lord came from time to time and stirred up the water. And the first person to step in after the water was stirred was healed of whatever disease he had. Verse 5. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" Would you like to get well? Would you like to get well? I wonder how he said it, Now, there were many people laying around. And yet he singled out this one. Why did he single out this one? For mercy. Would you like to get well? He singled out this man for mercy. This man, 38 years of infirmity. Who knows if it was from birth or a childhood accident or whatever the case may be. 38 years. We don't know how long he's been laying around this pool. We don't know how long he's been laying around this pool. But it's probably been a long time. And Jesus extends this man mercy. But look what happens in the next verse. "I can't, sir," the sick man said, "for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me." It's interesting. He's respectful. He says, "I can't, sir." I met a man this week, and he'd actually been here a few times. And he said, "Yes, sir." And he said, no, sir, and thank you, sir, and okay, we'll see you again, sir. And I said, you said sir a lot, don't you? And he said, well, yes, sir, I do. And he had been in the military in Special Forces and 82nd Airborne, and I'd been in that, and blah, blah, blah. But it's a term of respect. And that's the way he was using it. And that's the way that this lame man is using it. It's a term of respect. I can't, sir, for I have no one. Now, we looked at a story here earlier about a man who was paralyzed, another paralytic on a mat, and he had 4 friends. This man has no friends, or at least not at this point in the story. I have no one. Wow. That's pretty hopeless. I have no one to put me in the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me. This is a man who has 2 afflictions. He's paralyzed, but he's also lost hope. Here is Jesus. He says, would you like to get well? Would you like to get well? Would you like to get well? And instead of saying yes, he says, I can't make it to the water. He's completely, this is a man without hope. It's a hopeless situation. And so in verse 8, Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat. Come on, stand up. Okay. Now, pick up your mat. Okay. Now, walk. Yeah, I wonder if he said it, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk, or for when he said, okay, stand up. Let's try this, John. Stand up. I pick on John a lot. Never mind. Let me get somebody else. Steve, stand up. Okay. Pick up your mat. Now, this is a guy who for 38 years... Did I tell you to sit down? Did Jesus tell you to sit down? Do you have an authority problem? That's better. Okay, you can sit down. But here's a guy for 38 years now. Now, Don knows this. Don's been on crutches. This is a result of polio for how many years, Don? 54 years. Don has been lame. So Jesus sees that, and he says, get up. Get up. Well, okay. Now, take up your mat. Oh, okay. Okay. Now, walk. What? Walk. Jesus does what we talked about. The 4 stances that you can take to the world are to embrace, withdraw, overthrow, or engage. Jesus is engaging. He, as the leader of this unstoppable invasion force that is guaranteed ultimate victory through total global conquest, he is engaging. He is engaging this man. He's engaging this man with mercy. Would you like to be well? And power, authority. Stand up. Take up your mat. Walk. Wouldn't you like to be singled out for such mercy and power? Some of you do have hopeless situations, or seemingly hopeless situations. This man had a seemingly hopeless situation. I bet there wasn't a man in all of Israel. I bet there wasn't a person in all of Israel who gave this man a chance. And yet Jesus singled him out for mercy. You know, I wouldn't be surprised, just speculating, I wouldn't be surprised, though, that The reason, Jesus is holding discipleship school. His disciples are watching all this, You, me, us, them. Discipleship school is in session. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Jesus found the most hopeless situation in all of Israel to make a point. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I can't imagine any situation more hopeless than this. Can't walk, no friends, and you've been watching for who knows how many years other people moving into the water. When the angel stirred the water, the Spirit came down, whatever that means, and whoever got there first was healed. And to watch all these other people, time after time after time, they got their hope, but you didn't get yours. I bet this was the most hopeless, pathetic, tragic thing going on in the whole land, or could have been. Certainly there was, how could there be anything more hopeless than this? And yet Jesus singled him out for mercy and for power. So, what does this story reveal to us about Jesus? In a previous message, we had a parallel thought. We said Jesus exists to help every person win their battle. And the parallel thought here this morning that we see in this text, and this is the big idea. Well, I got to tell you that. Okay, did everybody get those other two? This is the big idea. Oh, well, I guess I should tell you this too. I forgot about this. This is pretty cool. This is a map of Jerusalem. And this is the old wall of Jerusalem. This is the Temple Mount. And this little thing right here is the Pool of Bethesda that we're talking about with the 5 porches. And you can go there today. It's a very deep excavation, but they've excavated the site. And so you can go to the very place that we're talking about now, where Jesus extended this mercy and this power in what seemed like the ultimate existential tragedy, this seemingly hopeless situation. This is the sheep. The sheep gate would be located right about there. There are all kinds of gates around here. There's the valley gate, the fish gate, the water gate, the horse gate, the dung gate. Actually, if you go to see the Wailing Wall today, you go through the dung gate to get there. I guess they, well, enough on that. So here's the big idea. This is what Jesus wants us to see in this text, I think. This is the big idea. No situation is so hopeless that it is beyond the mercy and power of Jesus. No situation is so hopeless that it is beyond the mercy and power of Jesus. He's taken the most pathetic situation, the unsolvable problem, the unanswerable question, and He's extended mercy. Would you like to be well? And power. Get up. Walk. Reading on in the text. Verse 9, instantly the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath, so the Jewish leaders objected, of course. It's interesting how those who want help are always ready to object to those who will. They said to the man who was cured, "You can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry that sleeping mat." They had like 39 rules and regulations for what you couldn't do on Sunday. Verse 11, but he replied, "The man who healed me told me, pick up your mat and walk." Who said such a thing as that? They demanded. The man didn't know, for Jesus had disappeared into the crowd. Do you get this? The man didn't even know who had healed him. It wasn't the man's faith that healed him. I mean, Jesus is really putting an exclamation point on His mercy and power here. It had nothing to do with the faith of the man. It had to do with the faith. The man didn't believe in Jesus. Jesus believed in the man. It doesn't make any difference if you believe in Jesus. Jesus believes in you. I watched this movie Bounce this week with Ben Affleck and Gwyneth Paltrow. And so Ben Affleck plays this guy who's in recovery from drinking too much, marketing executive. And he has a new assistant, a male assistant. And the male assistant also he's in AA. And so he invites him to an AA meeting. And Ben Affleck says, well, I don't really think I need to go. He said, besides, I don't believe in God. And the assistant says, oh, he's going to be so crushed when he hears that. Jesus remains anonymous to this man at this point. It's very interesting. Verse 14, but afterward Jesus found him in the temple and told him, now you are well, so stop sinning or something even worse may happen to you. And then the man went and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus that had healed him. I want you, just as another sidebar, to be very careful here. It says, now you are well, so stop sinning or something else even worse may happen to you. I want you to be very careful not to assume that the man had been ill because he was sinning. That's not what the text says. The text could have said, now you have this problem because you were sinning, so stop sinning or something worse might happen to you. It doesn't say that. It says, now you're well, so stop sinning or something even worse may happen to you. We do need to be careful not to be too quick to say what's causing a problem. The Bible offers many reasons. Sometimes it is sin. Sometimes it's so that God's power may be made manifest and displayed, as in John 9. We'll get to that, in a later lesson. It could just be the domino effect of the fall in the world. Our minds and bodies don't work like as good as they're supposed to, and so we make errors in judgment and run into other people and automobiles. Yeah, all kinds of reasons. But anyway, that's for another day. The big idea today, no situation is so hopeless that it is beyond the mercy and power of Jesus. Now, the big questions in hopeless situations and other kinds of suffering that every one of us think, even if we believe, is, does he know what I'm going through? Does he care? And can he do anything about it? Looking at this text this morning, does he know? He knew exactly what this man was going through. Does he care? He extended mercy. Do you want to get well? Can he do anything about it? Does he have the power to do anything about it? He said, get up. And so the second piece of this message is that he knows, he cares, and he can do something about it. He does have the power to do something about it. He knows what you're going through. Jesus is watching you. Right now, Jesus is watching you. You've heard the old joke. It's an old joke, but it's a good one. The burglar comes into the house, the ink is empty, and as he's tiptoeing through the house, he hears this voice, Jesus is watching you. And he freezes in panic, and he lets his eyes adjust to the dim light, and he looks around, and over in the corner he sees a cage with a parrot in it. And he says to the parrot, did you just say that Jesus is watching me? Yes, said the parrot. He said, well, what's your name? Parrot says, Clarence. Guy says, "That's a stupid name for a bird. What idiot would name a parrot Clarence?" Parrot says, "The same idiot that named our Rottweiler Jesus." Jesus is watching you. Psalm 139 tells us that he knows our thoughts from afar. He knows our rising up, our lying down. He knows every word we speak before it forms on the tip of our tongue. We have been knit together in our inner being. He knit us together. He knew our unformed body before we were born, that all the days of our lives have been ordained for us before one of them came to pass. He knows. And he shows that he knows in the text today with one example. And he cares. He cares so much. I personally, this week I thought through it, I've had in my life 3 hopeless situations. 3 hopeless situations. Number 1, let's just say as a real estate developer, I had $200 worth of properties, and I had $150 worth of mortgages. So, looking pretty good. And then the worst recession in my lifetime came along, and in 6 months' time, 6 months later, they told me that I had $100 of properties. The values dropped 50% in 6 months. Part of that, of course, is that they were overinflated to begin with, no doubt, but they dropped 50%. What's the problem? $150 in mortgages on $100 worth of properties. And it was a seemingly hopeless situation. I threw myself on the mercy of God. And I chose to believe that He had the power to deliver me. I chose to believe that He would, although I never presumed that He would, but I always believed that He would. It's a tightrope to believe that God will do something without presuming upon Him. But I believed. And so that belief led me to a course of action that was different from all my other peers. Basically, virtually all of my peers, they just went ahead and went bankrupt within a year or so. But I believed that God would extend me mercy. And so I slogged through those problems for 7 years. 7 years. And was able to get the ship right. I worked hard, sure. But mostly I cried a lot, to be honest. And I didn't just cry out to Santa Claus. I cried to God. I begged Him for mercy, and I believed that He would give it to me, and I begged Him to intervene and be powerful. And I believed that He would, and He did. It took 7 years. Let me tell you, it seemed a lot more hopeless at 6.5 years than it seemed at 6 months. It seemed pretty hopeless at 6.5 years. I actually, at one point, I called my lawyer. I said, "Hey, look, that's it. I can't take it anymore. I'm throwing in the towel." And he's a believer, and he's a great guy. And he said, "Well, I tell you what, why don't you just let me take over for a while?" So God extended mercy through a friend, through a brother. When I had lost hope, God had not lost hope in me. Same with you. Same with you. Situation number 2. My brother Bill. He's the only one in our family who's not come to Christ. And honestly, to this day, it is a seemingly hopeless situation. This is a man who, he's just not, he's downright hostile to the gospel. I can't get a single sentence out without him flashing. And so I've been praying for him ever since I've been a Christian. 35 years. Seems pretty hopeless. And yet, everybody else in our family has come to faith. And yet, I believe it is not a hopeless situation, even though it seems like it is. And I believe that God is going to extend mercy and power to this man, this flesh and blood brother of mine. Third hopeless, seemingly situation, seemingly so, is migraine headaches. And, I still get them. I thank God that they don't come as often or as intensely. And I thank God for Imitrex, which is a means of grace. Medicine is, God works through miracles. He also works through other means of grace. And so this is a little pill fob that I have with me 24/7. And inside are little pills. So that if I feel a migraine coming on, I can take one of these little pills, and usually that knocks it out. But before we got to the medicine, and they were there every day, and I was in my mid-30s, and sometimes the pain would be so intense, I'd just sit there and just tears would just stream down my face. And I remember reading a little description of somebody who's going through a migraine headache once as I was going through it. And I remembered losing hope. I just remember I just didn't believe. If Jesus would have said to me at that moment, "Would you like to be well?" I'd have said, "Well, sir, I just don't know what to do." And I just remember bawling like a baby and just thinking it was a hopeless situation. It wasn't. It wasn't. God's grace is sufficient for the day. Now, I still have them, though, okay? So, but it's not a hopeless situation. Now it's a thorn in the flesh. Paul said that he had this thorn, and he had asked God, he'd pleaded with God to take it away 3 times. I don't know why only 3 times. That seems like maybe a weenie approach to the deal. I would have, maybe that's why God didn't take it away. If you're only going to ask 3 times, you just live with it, I mean, I can think of 300 times I asked him to take away the migraines. But Paul said this. He said, "But God told me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." My power is made perfect in weakness. Oh, God, that your power would be perfect in me. And not because I'm strong, but because I'm weak. You want to know why I tell you all my little foibles and I'm so vulnerable and transparent about my own errors and things? Because I believe it's God's will for me to tell you based on that verse. Paul said, "Therefore, for Christ's sake, I will delight in weakness, because when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Therefore, for Christ's sake, I will delight in weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, difficulties. For when I'm weak, then I am strong." 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 8 through 10. And so I'm looking for mercy. I'm looking for power. You're looking for mercy. You're looking for power. The situation seems hopeless. And so one day I'm reading in the Bible. This is with regard to migraines still. I'm reading in the Bible, 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. "Now, therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourself also with the same attitude. Because he who suffers in his body is done with sin. As a result, you will not spend the rest of your earthly life chasing after evil human desires, but rather for the will of God." And I read that verse. And I said, bring on the migraines. Bring on the migraines. This is not a hopeless situation. The big idea today No situation is so hopeless that it is beyond the mercy and the power of Jesus. And the final piece. How does Jesus help the hopeless today? Well, I've just given 3 possible examples. The correct answer is He helps the same way today as He did for this lame man. He will come and He will just single you out for mercy. And you know, sometimes when you're so dull, you don't even know that you need to go to Him in prayer. I mean, you're so dull, you don't, I mean, I've been that, you know, we've all been that. You know, we just think, gosh, why can't I fix this? Why can't I fix this? And it's almost like you would think by accident that somewhere along the line you would have thought about the idea of praying, you know, but you don't. And how am I going to fix this? And your thoughts are far from Christ. And He comes up and He says, Willie, would you like to be well? Would you like to be well? Well, sir, Jesus, you know, I've tried everything. I mean, I just don't know what else to do. That's what that man was saying. By trying to solve his problems in his own strength, he had lost hope. And when we try to solve our problems in our own strength, it's inevitable that you're going to lose hope. Why? Because we don't have the power to solve our own problems in our own strength. The illusion that we can solve our own problems in our own strength comes from the fact that we can solve a lot of little problems in our own strength. But the real things that require mercy and power are only resolved by God. Now, how does Jesus help the hopeless today? He's given us this incredible access to Him. We don't have time to look at it, but sometime, if you want, read Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. It's the story of the wicked judge and the woman who comes repeatedly asking the wicked judge for justice. And finally he says, this woman she's going to drive me nuts. She is driving me nuts. I'm going to give her justice just to get her off my back. And Jesus says, if the wicked judge would do that, won't your Father in heaven much more readily give you what you deserve? Ask Him in prayer, and He will do it. So what's your seemingly hopeless situation? Do you believe what do you believe about it? Do you believe that there's no such thing as a hopeless situation? Or do you believe that it really is a hopeless situation? I hope by the reading and the exposition of this text and the other texts that we've talked about this morning that you have enough for the Spirit to superintend to your heart the belief that you could say, I believe that there is no such thing as a hopeless situation. Do you feel that way? That's the big idea today. There is no situation that is so hopeless that it is beyond the mercy and power of Jesus. Amen? Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for picking out the most hopeless, tragic, pathetic man in all of Israel. A man who didn't even know who you were, much less had faith in you, to show us the extent of your mercy and the awesomeness of your power. That you know what we're going through, that you care, and that you do have the power to do something about it. That nothing is beyond your mercy and power. Lord, help each of us who need this message for ourselves. Help us to deliver it to somebody else who needs this word of encouragement. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.